Hello, everybody. My name is Rogue Dog. I am a former competitive VR player, and I wanted to make the first part in what's going to be the little mini series where I start talking about aim, the things I never really put inside my coaching notes or my Google Docs. And this first thing is going to be me relearning with you all little aspects of aim. I've done this a couple times. If you follow my channel for some time, you know I have a tendency every year or so I'll just won't play for a couple months. So this time I stopped playing back in February. I come back. Aim is the first perishable skill. Every time you got to relearn it. It's the first thing to go. First thing to go, last thing to come back. So it takes a little bit of effort, a little bit of knowledge. I'm going to tell you exactly how I get my aim back from conventional average to competitively viable. I'll tell you all the steps. And hopefully that helps you as well. This first part is just going to be day one stuff. So like before you even put on before you even get in game, stocks, no stocks, and then just day one, easy little practice things that I do just to make sure I'm not making any obvious mistakes before I move on to like the fine tuning of aim. But yeah, it should be pretty simple. A little 5-minute video. First thing, you're running up, you're walking up. VR, one of the most common questions I get is, do you use a gun stock? If so, what gun stock? And I think a lot of people are under the impression that gun stocks will automatically make you good. What we really see, especially on the high end of players, we're start talking about like top 25%, top 10%, top 1%, like really, really good players. Having a stock doesn't really make you good. It might make you slightly more consistent, but it'll also slow you down and stop you from using utility, and reloads will take a little bit longer. And in games like this, where you're constantly jumping and going around, it's the difference between hooking in, grabbing, and then freehanding, or just going that, and you're already ready to shoot. That's why, even in the video I already uploaded, about half the time I'm freehanding just because stocks take too long. There's pros and cons to everything, and I think you'll find that after the first 50 hours or so of actual practice, not just playing the game, but like actually playing to get better, there is a distinction there. You'll kind of start to see that it doesn't really make a difference. There's freehanders who are more consistent than stock users, and stock users who are quicker than freehand users. It's very common. Doesn't really matter. It comes down to what you're comfortable with, because whenever that comfort's what's going to determine how much you actually want to play, and the more you actually want to play, the better you're going to get. Everything can be measured in hours. So that's kind of where I'd start. Just figure out, do I like the way it feels? Do I not like the way it feels? Do I like being strapped into this thing on my chest, or do I just want to sort of be able to do anything at any time? Moving on to the actual practice. This is Contractor Showdown. It's not quite like Tabor. It's not quite like the original Contractors. A lot of the games you've seen on my channel and you've seen me play in the past are very one-shot centric games. And what I mean by that is that I get my weapon, and at any range, my goal, original Contractors and Breachers, Tabor, is to be able to line up and tap someone in the head as quick as possible. DPS doesn't matter. Gun stats don't really matter. As long as I can get that reticle to that head, I am happy. That was my entire goal. This game isn't like that. This game's a lot more tracking focused, so it becomes very apparent very quickly if you don't tend to have actually good aim. So, speaking of that, there's generally three categories, three things that you should know as aim. I think aim is pretty much anything that you're going to do in-game is made up of three parts. The first is the flick. There's flicks up to target, and there's flicks sideways from target to target. And that's where you're going to spend the vast majority of your time doing. So up, and then to the side. What you're going to find is that you're not really looking at the reticle during this. This is more of an intuitive motion. We'll talk more about intuitive aiming later, but it's just basically aiming that you're doing by feel. Flicks are by feel. It's to get you to a general area. So I flick up, and it's going to be in an oval. So if I'm aiming at this guy's head, I could land here, I can land up here, I can go to the sides. It's going to be an ellipse around the target. That's going to be my flick way. Likewise, if I was flicking from a guy to the left to him, it'd still be an ellipse, where I could land here, here, there, but it's sideways. It's an ellipse in the direction of travel. By practicing, you're kind of hoping to make that ellipse a little bit smaller, but it's never going to be perfect. Everyone has their own range that flicks are like completely consistent in. For me, probably here to that guy is about as far as I would ever. just flat out rely on a flick without looking at my reticle. 50 meters, maybe, ish. Usually closer. You start with a flick. Pretty much every fight you do in VR is going to start with one to get to your target. After that, there's drags. And drags, this is where you start looking at your reticle. So you're not looking at your reticle, you flick up, I'm over here, let's say. Off to the left. I have my reticle in sight, I'm off target. Depending on the range, this way, if I'm outside of that 15 meters, I start dragging. So I look at my reticle, and I just bring it to. And I'm really just staring at my reticle and bringing it to my target. So you flick up, it's left, in this case, and you drag. It's a smaller, more controlled motion. It comes from your torso rather than... Flick's a very arm-centric movement. You're flicking up. It's a violent motion. Violent motion, torso, shoulders mostly. So it's like coming from either my hips, my shoulders, and I'm just bringing it back to the target. Past that, and a thing that's fucking up a lot of people, sorry YouTube, I'm not trying to be monetized, tracking. In a lot of games, you don't really need tracking, so we have an entire generation of people who are good at shooters that just never practice tracking, because you get the flick, you got the drag, and then you gotta keep your reticle on them. It's hard for me to do it while talking. I use a cheek weld, so I can't really talk, because then it moves my weapon all over the place as I talk. But as you're keeping your reticle on the guy, you're just nice and consistent. You're keeping it on him. And that way, as you fully automatic fire, you can just burn him down. It's just a consistent movement in whichever he's doing. And that depends almost entirely on your own personal reaction time. When people are quickly changing left, right, it's harder to compensate for. So that's something you have to be aware of. Everyone has their own little strategies. I'll go into that more in a future episode. So now that we're fairly comfortable with the idea of the parts of aiming, day one stuff, just building up muscle memory. What I like to do is just always in the beginning, just for like 5 minutes. Lots of practice isn't really necessary. It's just kind of understanding where your limits are and working with them. Just an easy pop up, pick a target. It's good if it's a little bit small and a little bit out of your comfort range. And just keep going until you can't, that's about as fast as I'm going to be. Unless I'm really throwing this off around violently. A pop up, maybe a little bit of a wiggle, and then an easy clean shot to a head. It's about as fast as I'm going to be. That's the speed I'm going to keep for now. I want to build it so that my muscle memory grows. So I'm just trying to move slightly faster than I'm comfortable with. Missing is fine. You're expected to miss. And you just keep doing that speed until it becomes consistent. And then you just go a little faster the next day. You don't need it's just a day-to-day thing. You don't reevaluate in the middle of it. It's only supposed to be a 5-minute thing. So that's my speed. Now that I know what speed I want to practice at, this is a game where a lot of full auto is necessary. I take a look at my full auto pattern. It's generally up and to the right, so I'm going to compensate down and to the left. Same deal, but instead of doing a single shot to his head, I'm going to do a burst. The idea is to build on our previous little flick muscle memory. You go up, you point to aim, and you compensate for recoil. That's what the vast majority of our fights are going to look like, except the guys we're going to be fighting or moving. So it's the flick, drag the target if you need to, recoil control. Flick, drag target if you need to, recoil control. I missed 2 shots there. It's expected. And just do this for a minute. Put my gun offset a little bit, bring it back. Because nothing's perfect. You're not always going to be directly in line. Move that to the left, bring it. And just do this for a second. Straight on. I'm starting to get consistent. The speed's fairly comfortable. I hit a couple body shots, but this is about where my comfort level is right now. I feel like I could hit that shot pretty much all day long. Reach this point? Okay. Let's choose the target a little farther out. Do the exact same thing to the body, and I'll just use the entire mag on that guy, going back and forth from the center. And what it's going to look like, I flick at a speed that's almost uncontrollable for me. I drag to him, and then I track his body as I do full auto. Again, only like a minute or 2, not that long. Just go up. I already hit him earlier, so He's moving again. Just good 10 rounds. They don't reset health. So I'm just going to fire until he's dead. And it doesn't need to be perfect. When is it, when is it ever actually perfect? One thing to know about this particular game, it's hard to see. The bullet isn't actually going where the bottom of the recoil pattern is. Because recoil you shoot, reticle goes up, comes back down. If the reticle starts at this triangle and goes up, if this was the full recoil pattern, the bullet's there. It's like a little 2/3 up. So I'm not actually aiming at the bottom of my reticle. I'm aiming like halfway through it. It's odd, but you know what? That's the quirk of the game. We work with what we're given, right? Same deal. We're up. I lost it. I stopped firing. Refired. It's never going to be perfect. Let's try another one. This guy up. Get the guy up in the doorway, because it'll force me to stop firing and refire. So, boom. Must have shot him earlier. Practice my aim for a second there. I have a pretty good idea where I am as I'm relearning this with the rest of you. The idea is that tomorrow, the speed at which I practice is what's uncomfortable for today. So I might improve by 20 milliseconds, something almost small. But over the course of a couple weeks, I'll have the same or better accuracy, and I'll be much faster than I am now, and my flicks will be a little bit cleaner. And that's all I can really ask for aim-wise. Aim's one of those very simple things that just takes a little bit of effort over a long time frame. You can't really shove it into a 6-hour window and expect to meaningfully improve, at least in VR. Real life has its own things. It's just not that complicated. Once you feel comfortable with this and you're like, okay, I'm about as fast as I can reasonably be, you move on to a different aspect. For me, probably in a week or two, because I'm just going to be doing this before my pregame lobbies. I'm not even going to go out of my way to do this. I'll probably grab a DMR and hang out up there and just wiggle back and forth and shoot at these far guys, see how many shots I can do. And I'll just do that before my pregame lobbies for a week, whatever it is. And then maybe I'll do pistols or shotguns or intuitive aim, something like that. In any case, thank you for watching if you come this far. I'll upload the next aspect of aim video when I get to it in my own practice.